Hallelujah, Yahweh. My name's Priscilla. I love Yeshua. I will be sharing some insights I got from Scripture. Let's break down walls, understand Paul. I will be glad if you learn anything at all.
Can we adopt pagan practices? Many of the holidays Christianity celebrates today are derived from pagan festivals way back when. Traditions such as Christmas trees, kissing under the mistletoe, cookies and milk, Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, dyeing eggs, and many more are rooted in rituals and traditions of heathen religions and cultures. For some of you, you may have never heard of these ties. I encourage you to look into it. For others, you may have heard these things, yet those origins are so far away, and the focus today is Christ, right? Lastly, some of you know of these roots and steer clear away from these holidays. Here's the question of the century. Does Yahweh mind us adopting pagan practices to worship Him? Ultimately, shouldn't that be our primary concern when we try to answer this question? Our hearts are desperately wicked, and His ways are higher than ours. So what does He think? Does the Bible answer this question? In short, yes, the Bible has an answer. A clear answer. Now, I realize I will step on some toes here, but really, we all have our love for God in common. We all want to serve Him. So let us be open-minded and let the Bible, which He gave us, inspire our way of worship and define what's pleasing to Him and what isn't. Alright, let's dive into Scripture. When Yahweh your God cuts off from before you the nations which you go to dispossess, and you displace them and dwell in their land, take heed to yourself that you are not ensnared to follow them, after they are destroyed from before you, and that you do not inquire after their gods, saying, How did these nations serve their gods? I also will do likewise. You shall not worship Yahweh your God in that way, for every abomination to Yahweh which He hates, they have done to their gods, for they burn even their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods. Whatever I command you, be careful to observe it. You shall not add to it, nor take away from it. Deuteronomy 12:29-32. It's pretty clear just by itself, but let's highlight a few things. The Israelites were going to be in contact with the Canaanites, Hittites, Jebusites, and all the parasites. Parasites. Anyways, they were going to be exposed to many forms of worship that these people had come up with for their deities, just like the people in Egypt. Now, not only does God tell them to utterly eliminate every trace of false gods from the land, but He also instructs them not to get any ideas. You see, these people were creative, just like you and I. You know, I really like this thing they did. What if we erase the name of idol X and write Yahweh on it? You know, sprinkle some temple water on it? To prevent this, Yahweh ordains, You shall not worship Yahweh your God in that way. No, it is not talking about worshiping the idols in this text. It is talking about worshiping Yahweh in the way the idols were worshipped. Sound a little familiar? This command is of such importance that Yahweh proceeds to explain why to us. He didn't just say, just do it because I said so, which He has all the right to say. He came down to our level and said, Look, my sons and daughters, don't do this, and here's why. Let's read His reason again. For every abomination to Yahweh which He hates, they have done to their gods. For they burn even their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods. If we worship Yahweh in the manner of the pagan nations, we are reminding Him of all the atrocities those nations committed alongside those seemingly harmless traditions to their false gods. Yahweh wants no part in it. He hates all the abominations they commit. Why would He want them incorporated in the worship of Himself? Alright, so we looked at the law. Now, is there an example in Scripture, and does it show the consequences? There's in fact too many for the scope of this study, and I encourage you to read all the prophets with this law in mind. Some things might just stand out to you. I will, however, go over one particular example that I think illustrates this law and the consequences of breaking it very well. The golden calf. What, you may say? But they were worshipping the golden calf, not Yahweh. Let's read the text again, shall we? Now when the people saw that Moses delayed coming down from the mountain, the people gathered together to Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us gods that shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." And Aaron said to them, "Break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people broke off the golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them to Aaron. And he received the gold from their hand, and he fashioned it with an engraving tool, and made a molded calf. Then they said, "This is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt." So when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow is a feast to Yahweh." Then they rose early on the next day, offered burnt offerings, and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink, and rose up to play. Exodus 32, 1-6. Now in verse 1, the word for gods is Elohim. Even though gods is a valid translation, Elohim is a title given to God Most High in the scriptures. This alone isn't enough evidence, but verse 5 seals the deal, inserting the tetragrammaton, the name of God, Yahweh. Aaron proclaims that tomorrow is a feast to Yahweh. The people asked Aaron to make Yahweh for them. They gave all their gold to create Yahweh and to make a great feast. To understand what they were doing, the people were afraid that Moses would not return. They thought he was dead. Now, the Egyptians and many other cultures did not believe in direct contact with their gods, but they had the necessity for a mediator, which was some carved or molded idol. So the people thought, well, hey, Moses is gone. Who is going to mediate between us and Yahweh? Aaron, make us Yahweh, who brought us up out of the land of Egypt. Let's give them some credit. They didn't all of a sudden attribute the deliverance from Egypt to some new god. They picked a calf, likely because of the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph, which was the ox and represents strength and leadership. They likely thought it was quite fitting. However, we all know how this ends. Yahweh sees this very differently. To him, they are worshipping another god. Verse 7 and 8. And Yahweh said to Moses, "Go, get down, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made themselves a molded calf, and worshipped it and sacrificed to it, and said, 'This is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt.'" Exodus 32, 7-8. So this didn't turn out so hot for the Israelites. Oh sure, Yahweh's anger burned, but they were almost completely consumed by it. I think we can safely conclude that Yahweh does not like it when we adopt pagan practices to worship him. Aaron sure was terrified. And Moses said to Aaron, "What did this people do to you that you have brought so great a sin upon them?" So Aaron said, "Do not let the anger of my Lord become hot. You know the people, that they are set on evil. For they said to me, 'Make us gods,' Elohim, that shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." And I said to them, "Whoever has any gold, let them break it off." So they gave it to me, and I cast it into the fire, and this calf came out. Exodus 32, 21-24. The calf molding itself is quite supernatural. But don't tell me Bible history people are much different from people today. I say we learn from these mistakes. The golden calf is very high on the list of worst errors in biblical history, and I would suggest today we've got our own share of golden calves that need to be grounded to dust. Though maybe we can go without drinking it. So in conclusion, can we adopt pagan practices? Well, yes, we can, but we may not. If we wish to honor Yahweh, he said we were not allowed to. I think it's quite clear that Yahweh wants no part in it, and that it hurts and angers him. There's much more that could be said, and really seek and you will find more answers in scriptures on the topic. But for the purposes of this study, as followers of Yeshua and Yahweh, we should stay far away from any worship related to other gods, even if it is in his name. You may just find he has his own set of festivals, tied beautifully into the gospel and what is yet to come.